Okay, so I think you all will get a notification about recording. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining today. Um, a little bit about what we'll be going through today. Obviously, some of this information will be sensitive information, so we'll kind of talk about taking care of yourself. Um, Hopefully, Andy from Ali Remembered will be joining us soon. But I'm Rachel Williams. I'm with the Phoenix Center, and so just have a little bit of information to present today. Again, it's the information that we're going to be discussing today can be triggering. So just remember to take care of yourself. Also, if you have questions or if you need support afterwards, I'm always here. I'll provide my direct contact information in the slideshow at the end so you can contact. So if that means like, hey, I just need to take my camera off, take a little break, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Also, in the chat, you can ask me questions. If you don't feel comfortable asking them personally, you can direct them specifically to me and I can answer those as we go along. Some of our principles today is we want to keep an open mind. So there might be some information that we're sharing or have questions about that we don't know. It's okay to ask those questions, but make sure that they are done in a way that's respectful. Understanding everyone has their own experiences. We might have different language that we use, but trying to keep our language as respectful as possible. Also, learning that some people might have very little information about the topic of interpersonal violence, and that's okay. It's okay to ask those questions. I want you to make sure that you feel supported here. Also, some of the information that we're going to be discussing today is uncomfortable. It's hard to talk about this topic, and it's really difficult sometimes to share things. Share what you feel comfortable sharing. Also, please know that that's okay to feel uncomfortable asking these kinds of questions or sharing things. Also, just housekeeping, if you have trouble hearing me, if there's anything that I can do to make your comfortability level better, just let me know. Sometimes, I'll just be talking on mute and not know it for 20 minutes. So please let me know if that's the case. Also, taking accountability. This is who I am. These are my experiences and they might be different and that's okay. So also I like to acknowledge like this is my experience as someone who's provided advocacy services for quite a while now, about 12 years. So I'm obviously like one person. There might not be the perspective of every single person in this room. So acknowledging that there are experiences and perspectives out there that might not be actually present in this conversation today. So here's a little bit about what we'll be doing today. So introductions, who we are, meaning who the Phoenix Center is and what we offer. Who are you? So hopefully everyone's shared that in the chat. Also going to be discussing red flags. What are red flags? And what do I do if I think I'm witnessing red flags? So we also will be discussing bystander and what it means to be an upstander. I heard that lingo a while back and I just really like that. So standing up, upstanding. And then if Andy joins us today, we'll be discussing his services with Ali Remembered. I'll talk a little bit about their services regardless. And then we do have a case study example. So that's what to expect today. And then obviously questions throughout if you have them, or questions at the end are fine. So here's our door. This is the Phoenix Center at Anschutz, and we are at the third floor of Education North building, and that's right outside the elevators. So right by the ping pong table, for those of you who don't know where we are physically, that is a good space to find us. I am remote right now, so with that being said, it is easier to contact via email, call, or booking online through our database, our calendar database. That will share you all of the availability that I have, as well as some of our other advocates. See something in the chat, so I'm going to check.
I just said Education 2 North. I don't think you said 2.
Oh, thank you very much.
You might have. I didn't think you did.
Okay, thank you. Yes, because there are several buildings on campus. So I'm still going to play the new girl card. I started in September, so thanks, Caitlin. For those of you now joining us, we are being recorded. So if you're uncomfortable with that, feel free to take your camera off. And if you're comfortable sharing who you are and how you're related to the CU Anschutz campus in the chat, so we can get a understanding of who's here today. So that's who we are. I am the only hired member of employee on our staff. The rest of the people who work at Phoenix Center Anschutz are fabulous volunteers. If you are interested in becoming a volunteer, just reach out to me and we can facilitate that and make that happen. We are confidential advocates, so anything that you share with us is going to be private. There's a few exceptions to that as it relates to like child abuse and elder abuse and some Title IX things. But we do offer these services, and it's really at your needs and at your requests. So if someone comes in and says, hey, I want just some information, I just want like a pamphlet, I just want this. We're not going to require you to do like all of that specific paperwork. However, that's really how we track who we support. So that's helpful for us. But again, it's really like a case management based process where individuals who are looking to get support on either their experiences or someone else's experiences can reach that with us. Here's a little bit about our programs. We are really designed to create a holistic support. So if someone comes in and says, I'm experiencing some issues with housing and I'm experiencing potentially abuse from a partner, and we have kids in common, and there's all of these nuances that come with relationships, we are going to be able to support them in the best way for them. So that becomes really centered on what are my needs and what can we assist you with. So we also, in addition to doing the one-on-one advocacy, do provide some curriculum-based support as well as outreach within the community, within CU Anschutz community. We had our red flags up for Red Flag event in October, domestic violence awareness. And we're always answering questions. I'm always answering questions from faculty and staff as it relates to what are the best ways that I can support someone who might be going through this. And someone just told me X, Y, and Z. So how do I best support them? So we're happy to answer questions like that, as well as how do we integrate this sort of conversation so that people are comfortable with it. Once you leave our campus and become, contributing members of the medical field, or how do we support someone as we stay here, as we become staff and as we stay staff here. So what are red flags? I'm sure you all have heard of them before. I think nowadays we have a tendency to overuse them in society, like, oh, they use this word or they like this show, that's a red flag. So unfortunately, it does become a little bit cultured and cliched, but back in the world of domestic violence, when this was really initiated, it was to bring awareness to things that you might be needing to look out for in terms of receiving abuse or being in an abusive relationship. It can present itself in a multitude of different ways. You might have heard domestic violence, dating violence, intimate partner violence. Here at the Phoenix Center, we touch base on all of these things. We do anything regarding interpersonal violence. So that's domestic violence, intimate partner relationship violence, sexual assault, stalking, and harassment. Here are just a couple examples. So we have financial abuse and financial red flags. So this could look like someone controlling all of your money. You have to check in with a partner. If you're allowed to use a credit card, they control all of the finances. In working in this industry for a while, I've actually had a lot of women come to me and ask questions about like, well, how do I even access my money? So there's that control piece of my partner has all of the money, therefore I have nothing to support myself if I needed to leave. Also, I don't know how to access it. So maybe keeping all of the savings accounts and information private, or keeping those documents private, or only keeping your name on it. Emotional and psychological abuse can look like a lot of different things as well. This is typically like name calling in ways to manipulate your partner to feel one way or another, or to get them to not act one way or another. So if you're thinking about just typical like name calling like you do with like your brother or sister, the younger brother, we do that sometimes, but we're really looking at why are you using this language? So if you know someone doesn't like a certain word or a certain language and you're using that to make your partner feel a certain way, that's the emotional and the psychological aspect. I'm sure some of you might have heard of gaslighting. Gaslighting does stem from like the emotional abuse. So if your partner has made previous statements or you've made previous statements and then you bring it up and your partner completely denies it, that is gaslighting. So it actually comes from a movie and it's escaping my memory right now. But basically crazy making is what it's referred to in the industry. So you're having a conversation with someone and they had brought this up in the past, excuse me, and said, well, I said X, Y, and Z, you're crazy. So that does happen a lot, unfortunately. Please look out for that, not only within your own relationships, but the people that we work with and support. Physical abuse, I think that often historically domestic violence has looked like a woman with a black eye or a woman with a broken arm. And although that is true, it's often, I think, highlighted in a way that's not honest to what domestic violence is. Typically, when you're in an abusive relationship, your partner will do all of these things before using physical violence. So they're trying to control their partner's actions, their partner's words, the way their partner reacts to certain things. And then lastly, if their partner isn't acting the way that they deem is appropriate, someone might use physical violence. So a lot of it is this tiptoeing on eggshells. I'm not going to do this because I think that my partner will harm me if I do this. And then typically one of the last ways that someone will hurt their partner is actually harming them physically. That's obviously just like my general experience and working with people who've experienced this type of violence. It's a lot of information. Anyone have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So there's also a couple other types of red flags. You have spiritual, so anything that you do to make your partner feel bad about practicing a certain religion or using like religion against someone. So if you're in like a Christian-based organization or religious practice with your partner, and your partner says, well, you need to do this because John 2:16 says you need to love your partner. That's a form of spiritual abuse. Again, with sexual, it's similar to physical and emotional, but we can also have that in intimate relationships where you have someone who says, you know, I am your boyfriend, you need to have sex with me, or why wouldn't you want to have sex with me? I'm your partner. So really, there's a lot of different kinds of red flags, but these are just a few examples. This is some information that I found in my journey in this field. This is not my information, but it's information that I really liked. So it is adapted from what is bystander prevention, and that's from the Sexual Assault Services Organization in Durango. So bystander, obviously we know what that word is, like you're witnessing something, you're experiencing something. It might not be directly within your circle, but you witness it. So I like to say upstander. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, when I'm speaking about being a bystander or standing up to someone who's experiencing this type of violence, what we want you to do is make sure that it's safe. That's first and foremost. Like never insert yourself if you can help it. I know some people have different personalities and experience different things, but make sure that you're in a safe space to do that, or that the actions that you will be taking are safe to do so. Also want to make sure that it doesn't aggravate the situation, that if you intervene, that person might be harmed further. Obviously, that's not what we want as well. This is a really serious thing sometimes where you might not know everything that's going on within a relationship. So obviously, take it as a case-by-case basis. Being in the medical field, I think we have a really unique way and vulnerable way to reach people and to also have that one-on-one outreach to someone. You might be witnessing someone who, experiencing this type of violence and doesn't have anyone else to rely on. So knowing that we have this unique space to reach someone who's going in for medical care and might never have heard of this type of violence before. I think this goes for how we work in our professional environment as well. If you hear a conversation that sounds offensive, sounds demeaning, you might notice something, the way that someone's treating their partner, it's okay to stand up. It's okay to intervene. I think you can do that in a multitude of different ways. It doesn't have to be this black and white thing of this is what I'm going to do every single time. Read the room, figure out what's the best way to approach the situation. Because standing by isn't suitable. I think especially here at the CU Anschutz community, we all want an environment where people feel safe and welcome, and we have to be proactive in creating that environment ourselves. I am going to ask a question, so shout it out in the chat. Any ideas why someone would not feel comfortable standing up? So say you're witnessing something and you're not sure if you should intervene. What are some typical reasonings behind why someone would not want to be upstanding person or someone who stands up to this? I don't see, oh yes, Rachel, fear of retaliation. Yes, absolutely. I think especially today in today's age, we never sure what's going on in a situation, and if someone might be scary or might have a weapon on them. So I think that's an appropriate thing to assess because again, like your safety is the utmost important. Worrying about reading the situation incorrectly. Yes. Sometimes people use different languages than us. So it might be hard to assess, like, is that their normal language? Is that how they interact with one another? Great. Don't know the people well, misinterpreting the situation. Also true, yes. We don't know every single couple and the language they use, and if that's just a normal way to react. You have the stereotypical people who, like in my family, for instance, we were all yell at each other, and we're just loud. It's not that we're actually being demeaning. Don't know what to do or make the situation worse. Absolutely. So I think it's easy to say like that feels bad, but I don't know how to help. And so hopefully you'll learn a little bit about that throughout your practice in the medical field. I think a lot of us are in the CU Anschutz campus world. And that's really, really hard to assess a situation and really figure out, like, is this the person wanting help? Are they needing help? How can I help them without really aggregating the situation? And raised to be polite and respectful and not intervene. That's a big one. I think a lot of people will see or hear something and say, that's not my business. That's not my problem. I want to respect that that's that person's situation. When it comes to intimate partner violence, excuse me, it's really, really important that we obviously acknowledge the safety aspect, but also not a lot of people understand the intricacies and the red flags. Again, going back to like domestic violence is they punched me, they hit me. There's just so many different aspects of domestic violence and intimate partner violence that people aren't aware of. So a little bit about what I do and what we do at Phoenix Center is creating that awareness of like, that's not okay. So creating a space for people to know that that type of language, that the type of actions are actually part of an abusive relationship. So thanks for answering that in the chat. Let's see. Someone comes to us, or you have a friend that comes to you, a colleague, whoever it may be, a peer, and discloses some information, and that information will likely be very personal. It will likely be very intense. How do we support someone? So someone explains their story to you, how are you going to react? The first thing that we want to do is make sure that we're mirroring the language that they use. So if someone says they did this, that's what we would articulate back and mirror their language. So making sure to not fill in those gaps with what we understand it is, but really acknowledging the language that they're using. Also, I worked in the criminal justice field for years and years, and we use the language victim and offender. And that's not always the best language to use. And so acknowledging that some people might like that language and others find it really offensive. So I typically use language such as someone who has experienced violence or those who have experienced violence to really bring it back down to like you're a human being. That doesn't define who you are, but you are going through this and validating that it's not okay. So we definitely want to mirror that same language to create this space of comfortability and also safety. Also creates the understanding that they're not being judged. Also really want to validate their experiences. So someone comes to you and shares this, you want to absolutely believe them. There's no reason that someone would be lying to you, especially in the world that we're working in. As a confidential advocate, I really never think that that's going to be the case. They're taking time out of their day to come talk to me. But same in the medical field, like we want to make sure that people are being appreciated for sharing that information because that's really, really difficult to do. Also want to reaffirm they don't deserve that. So you hear their information, you can mirror it back to them and really remind them like that's not okay that you experienced that. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. That will again create a safe, supportive space where they might feel comfortable sharing more information. Also, the last thing we want to do is for someone to really feel vulnerable enough to share this information and then experience something that traumatizes them further and really creates a space of, well, I'm not going to open up again because when I opened up the first time, it went poorly. A lot of what we ask here and a lot of what you might ask in the medical profession is, how can I help? So really identifying the needs that someone is coming to you for. Do they want to just process their story? Do they want someone to hear them and to affirm that what they're going through is awful? Or do they want assistance with something else? So really assessing that situation in ways that is centered on their needs and their story. Someone might come in and you're like, oh my gosh, they need help with X, Y, and Z. They need to get out. They need to take the kids with them. That's really their choice. And just because we might be worried for their safety and concerned for their safety, it's not our life. So we really have to support them in the ways that they are asking. Okay, so here we have a little case study. So the questions, I'll ask the questions first, and then we'll go through the case study together. The questions that we'll ask at the end are, what would you do in this situation? What questions would you ask her? And how do you ask her these questions privately and safely? So here we have a cisgender female patient, uses she, her pronouns, so that's why I ask her later on. She's 24, comes in for treatment in the ER with a cut on her head. Explains she was drinking and fell over, hit her head on something which caused the cut. Her husband is there. He mentions that she has a drinking problem and is always doing this sort of thing. He tells you that he consistently tells her she has a problem and wants to help her, but she's her own worst enemy. She won't listen to me. What you observe, you notice the patient does smell faintly of alcohol. The patient stopped making eye contact and always looking back at her partner when you ask her a question. In addition to the laceration on her head, you notice some red markings along her neck, bloodshot eyes, and small bruises on the back of her neck and arm. When you ask her about these bruises, she tells you that her husband is right. She's always drinking too much, and he grabs her to keep her from falling into things. So digest, process that. What would you do in this situation, and what kind of questions would you ask? Obviously, knowing very little about this patient, and seems like she's hesitant to share more. How are you going to ask her these questions in a private and safe way? So feel free to add that into the chat, or if you feel brave, you can unmute yourself and ask. an answer, excuse me. Yes, so someone mentioned asking the partner to leave. I will tell you that from my experience, they're going to say no. And the person who is the female patient, I really should have named her, sorry. She's probably going to say, no, I want my partner to be here. So what do we do in those situations where you sense that there might be some abusive patterns and abusive tactics being used by this partner, and we need to ask this person questions privately? Don't see anything else in the chat. Okay, here we go. Yeah, tell them it's the hospital's policy. I like that. It's very creative. And sometimes it's easier to shift the blame to someone else. I often, as an advocate, will like take the blame for something. Just say this is, it's the law. Just say it's the rule, the policy of our program. If the partner tries to answer for the patient, I would firmly say I'm asking the patient and would like to hear from her. That's good. I think that is a very assertive way to explain, like, I'm actually asking this person. Given that this person was looking back to their partner, there might be some hesitancy still in being honest. So I think these are great. You're definitely on the right track. I actually spoke to a nurse yesterday who was telling me that in order to speak to someone privately, after noticing some concerns about this person's safety and their potential to be in an abusive relationship, she actually went and waited in the, forgive me, I don't know medical lingo, but the room where they do the x-rays, the CT scans, and the partner was told, sorry, you can't come into that room. So that nurse was waiting in that room for that patient just so she could have that one-on-one dialogue with her. Depending on role, putting notes of observed behaviors and charts and notes to document when and where appropriate. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that this is at least documented somewhere, because if this person comes in later or comes in for another reason, maybe they want to bring forth a case that they are being abused, and they would like that documented. Also, just letting that next person who's working with that patient know, like, maybe we should check in on them and check in on their safety and their physical well-being. When I read through these facts, seeing the marks along the neck, the bloodshot eyes, and small bruises on the back of her neck and arm, I go immediately to, was there strangulation here? You might notice, like, we'll go a little bit over that, but I think that especially in today's day and age, people don't really truly understand the significance of strangulation and how absolutely terrifying it can be for you, not only in the moment, emotionally traumatizing, but physically traumatizing as well. And it is such a high mortality rate for people who are strangled. And people don't understand that that doesn't always happen immediately. It can be later on through just whatever things are breaking, or the medical procedures afterwards. So we also have a tendency in our society to call strangulation choking. So people will say, yeah, they choked me, they were choked. That's actually not choking. Like, you choke on a sandwich, it's something that happens within you. To be strangled is a lot more severe. So I see these and I see, okay, that's concerning. I also am looking at the drinking and I'm thinking, okay, you're drinking, that's fine. You're an adult, you can do that. But why maybe are you drinking so much? So maybe this person's drinking because they're trying to escape the situation that they're in. emotionally. So I would maybe address that with her if you were able to speak with her one-on-one. So here's a little bit about strangulation. Um, I'll also provide this to you all online just so you can look over. This is from the National Training Institute for Strangulation Prevention. These are all some signs of what might appear to be someone who has been strangled. So you have bruising around the mouth, petechiae, the little dots near and around your eyes, as well as on your face. These obviously that's a lot of side effects and signs of strangulation. So it can be, more minor and then obviously very severe. Here is a little diagram of all that exists within your neck. And obviously I am not a medical professional at all. So you probably all know a little bit more about this than I do. But as you can see, there's a lot of veins. There are a lot of bones and a lot of smaller bones. So really easy to harm someone and also to create a lot of harm by putting pressure there. Here are some things that can happen if you are strangled. And this is something that we see in a lot of people who've experienced this type of violence, just loss of memory. So not remembering simple things. You add that to significant trauma, which creates this world of, I don't know when this happened. I don't know how it happened. This can be really hard for people. Not only is it difficult to then process things on your own and figure out, I don't even know what I experienced. I can't tell you how frustrating that would be. But also if someone wants to press charges or make a report to law enforcement, they might be seen differently because they can't figure out what happened and when it happened. And that might be something that really bars someone from creating a report or going forward in the legal world. Also, just telling their story might be hard because people judge, well, why wouldn't you know? Like, this is a really big experience, right? It's an awful experience. Why wouldn't you remember? So difficulty speaking, dizziness, headaches, urination and defecation can happen when strangled for, I think it's only 15 seconds. Also voice and throat change that might last for weeks. I worked with someone who was strangled in one of my programs, and she actually was about 2 months before her voice got back to normal. So just imagine the pressure of that and what it creates inside your body. So now what? Now what do we do? What I would encourage everyone here to do, anyone who's listening to this recording, is really notice what's happening around you. Really take heed to what someone's telling you. They might be sharing something with you and doing it in small doses just to test how you would react. So please be aware of that and notice, like, someone might be actually reaching out for help. Too often, domestic violence is a very isolating thing, and someone might not have that support anywhere. They also might not know who to turn to. So just be mindful of that. Challenge when you can. If you notice someone saying something disrespectful or even using just language in their daily life that can be really harmful, stand up to that and challenge that. If that's a person that you work with, obviously do it in the best way possible, maintaining that working relationship. If it's someone that you see out on the street, do it safely, make sure that that would be an appropriate way to handle that situation. Also, never stop learning. The more we learn about a situation and the more we learn about intimate partner violence and how that can look, the more we're able to help and assist someone understand that themselves. Teaching others, that's really what I do as well. So again, if you guys have questions about how do we assess the situation, how do I support someone, or what things do I say to someone if they're needing that sort of support or asking for support. Okay, that is all we had today. I did see something else pop up in the chat. Okay. This QR code will take you directly to our website, where you can find more information about this. If you have ideas or suggestions for information or things you'd like to learn about, please let us know. That's something that me or some of our amazing volunteers can also contribute to and make sure that we're getting this information out there. So best way is email, but also feel free to call or stop by. Again, at 2 North is where we're located. Anybody have questions? I actually, now that I'm remembering, we didn't really talk about Ali Remembered. So sorry that Andy could not be with us today. I will show that website though, just so you all have some knowledge of that. Oh, look at that. This is what shows you all of my looking. Okay. Here we go. Ali Remembered. So Ali unfortunately lost her life to domestic violence. She was strangled by her partner. Here's Ali. At 18, she started dating him at a pretty young age. And obviously, the younger you are, the less experience we have. What do we normalize and what do we see as just typical behavior within a relationship? That's a whole nother topic. But unfortunately, she lost her life to that partner. And now this organization reaches out and does trainings for what to look for. Let's talk about like what red flags we missed so that you all can hopefully reach out to someone who's needing that support. And how is the best way to approach someone who's in this type of situation? So that's a little bit about them. All right, any questions from anybody? Any thoughts? Okay. Yeah, well, everyone, thank you for coming, and obviously reach out if you have questions. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye, guys.